Hi, David. Thanks so much for joining.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, we can
hello
hear.
there.
Hi. Thanks so much for finding time. I think we should start the interview because we don't have so much time. So I just propose to start.
Great, perfect.
So my first question would be that in your latest book, Live Wired, you argue that we might someday be able to read through details of someone's life. It reminded me of, this magical Harry Potter movie where he with the Harry Potter with Dumbledore tried to go through the memories. So you basically argue that that would be possible one day. And my first question would be, we already have some brain-computer interfaces, but what are the main scientific challenges to make this reading of memories possible? What don't we have yet?
Great question. The answer is we don't have the theory about understanding how our experiences in the world translate into the exact structure. So, in this forest of neurons, 86 billion of them with 500 trillion connections, the question is, everything that you experience, the fact that we're meeting online and so on, changes this forest in this very detailed, very specific way. But because we don't know how to read that yet, that's the entire challenge. And actually, sorry, there's actually a second challenge, which is just the computational power to be able to read that. So for me to actually get a 3D electron micrograph reconstruction of your brain would take about a zettabyte of data, which is about a quarter of the computational capacity of the planet right now. So it's a huge amount of data. And we don't even know if that would be sufficient. You might need more data about, exactly where the proteins are and exactly which proteins are getting expressed and so on. So the amount of data is mind-boggling. And I guess that's the second challenge, is how could we get that much data and how would we read it?
Thanks. So basically, that would be a great segue to my another question. Do you think that the mapping of human brain is possible? I know there is the project, Human Connectome project. So do you think it's feasible to achieve this mapping?
It should be totally feasible to do because it's just stuff. It's just pieces and parts. Whether it is feasible in our lifetime is another question, because it's something of a problem of such enormity that it's not going to be easy. But theoretically, it's totally straightforward to do.
And basically, if we achieve this, I want to ask about ethical questions. There is now where we see where there is technology, even though there are some restrictions in the world. For instance, with genetics, we see that some countries don't follow those restrictions, like with CRISPR-Cas technology. So basically, when this will be achieved, the mapping or the reading of thoughts or the basically reading of memories, then it would definitely be violated. What do you think? Should we from straightforward from now think about some boundaries, legal boundaries towards that, even before we achieve this scientific success?
The answer is yes. And, it's always important to think about these legal boundaries in advance. I have a suspicion that we are so far in advance that it doesn't mean anything yet. I mean, we're not anywhere close to this. And almost certainly, at least for the next several hundred years or something, this would be something where you could do it once somebody has died, which is a really interesting it makes me, I don't know, but it makes me wonder if it's a different degree of the same thing, where when someone dies, people read through their diaries, they read through the letters they exchanged, they discover all kinds of things that the person did that they didn't realize had been done. So although it seems wacky to read somebody's brain, it might just be a different degree of that post-mortem examination of a life.
Thanks. There is a topic that our team, our scientific magazine is very interested in, and it's fakes, manipulation, pseudoscience. We see that it's growing due to various reasons. And here's the question I want to ask you. It's about neuroplasticity. So in your Guardian interview, in your books, you mentioned a lot about, so I just jotted down that example you've mentioned, that if a child has half their brain removed in surgery, the functions of the brain will rewire themselves. But that's very interesting to me and our team. What happens when a person falls down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theories? So the part of the brain isn't physically removed, but it's very hardly, damaged by this misinformation and so on. So is it reversible, or does in some way that the whole brain also rewires itself? Can you?
Well, okay, so
elaborate on that.
So I think the analogy is not perfect, but in general, if you're given misinformation, of course that changes your model of the world. So forget the thing about removing part of the brain. If I think that something is a particular way, that changes how I see the world. So that's just true because of brain plasticity. The challenge, I think, is, we all talk about misinformation, but it's not easy to solve that problem, because the notion of truth, the notion that there is some truth, that if we just got this right, we should have news agencies that report this. There's no such thing. Life is complicated. The world is very complicated. And so there are clear lies, but it's very difficult to know what truth is when you have 100 people clash or whatever. How do you report the story? What's the right way to report that story? So but yes, anyway, everything that we take in shapes our brain, and whether that's complete misinformation or pretty much true or whatever, that changes things. And by the way, because we live in the 21st century, there's lots of stuff that we'll be taking in that in the 22nd century people won't believe any longer, but that just just makes us who we are.
Basically, one more of my question is, I know that you're not a fan of this textbook depiction of brain, of the parts of the brain, but still I want to ask you, what part of the brain is your favorite, in a sense? It's maybe most promising to do research on right now. What do you think, like, the scientific community should pay attention right now more to and coordinate the research over it?
For me there's no single part of the brain, because it's all a giant network. I mean, everything's connected to everything. So to my mind, the most important thing is the flexibility, the plasticity of the brain. And this is what I write about, where something, if you go blind, your hearing and your touch takes over. And if you go deaf, your hearing and your vision takes over. It's the flexibility of the brain that's the really interesting part to me, rather than any one given part. As far as what the community should concentrate on, that of course has to do with improving our technology, which is to say all of the things that aren't directly involved in the brain, but allow us to measure the brain in new and very specific ways. So it's unlikely that we're going to get very far with an all-encompassing theory of the brain until we can really make measurements of billions of neurons in real time. That's when we'll have the data, and then we'll say, oh, look at what fell out of the data. So that's the important part to me.
You are also not only a researcher, but entrepreneur. And in Silicon Valley, there is a huge urge to, merge research and business and so on. Do you think that, and I know that you've been asked before about Neuralink and Elon Musk, and there are plenty of other startups, but do you think this commercial applications can accelerate the research on the brain? And so does it basically help your research, or it's in the way because it brings more hype or more pressure on the researchers of neuro researchers?
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting question. I think it's not easy to answer, but I would say on balance it's helpful. And the reason is academia functions in a very particular way where you have to write grants to do study on a particular problem, and it has to be a very small problem, and you're just taking the next little step. And so for anybody, and this applies to many people in the field who have a big idea and they really want to take a big leap, it's very difficult to do that within academia. So I'm very happy and grateful that this other world exists where you can say, look, we want to shoot for the moon. Actually, let's take shooting for the moon as an example. If you were in academia, you could never build a rocket ship and get to the moon. You need something like NASA or SpaceX or Blue Origin to do that, because academia is just really limited in what it can do. So I think both are very useful. Academia for doing fundamental stuff, and entrepreneurship for actually building the product and making something happen.
Thanks for answering that. And so I have one more question I want to squeeze in, that actually we have only 15 minutes for the interview, but due to your research, our brain's perception could wrap time, and it might seem longer for someone who is listening right now, or shorter. So basically, during your research, what contributes to our perception of time? That we it shorter or longer?
Yeah, when we're judging something retrospectively, when we're judging how long something had lasted, it's all about memory. Every bit of it is about how much memory you can pull up about what happened. So when I think, okay, when was it since I last saw my friend so-and-so, I think, okay, well, let's see, this happened, boop, and that's how I make an estimate. But it turns out that if you're doing things that are really boring, then you're not laying down a lot of memory. If you're doing things that are very exciting during that time, you have tons of memory. And so it can make that seem like a shorter or longer time. And, of course, one of the difficulties during lockdown has been that, we're locked in the same four walls, and it's difficult to lay down clearly distinguishable memories when you're in the same location all the time. So that's why people have been very confused about time over the past year and a half. But that's how you judge duration, how long something lasted in the backwards direction.
I know that in this domain, you've done some very interesting research with people falling. I think it's very, courageous to do such experiments. Do you have the new frontiers, new maybe ideas in mind that you can share? And that's the first part of my question. And maybe the last part of my question, the last question would be what do you think, what you dream about to be discovered during your lifetime? We're not talking about my first question about maybe like that it's possible, but what should you think will be discovered during your lifetime that you are waiting for?
I mean, it's the neural code is what I'm waiting for. And I think it is possible. The neural code is simply, okay, we know that you've got all these neurons that are, having these little spikes, up to hundreds of times per second. So each neuron is going pop, 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 and you've got billions of these, but we don't know what the code is. So we're just listening to random stuff. And, the big giant life-changing discovery in the 1950s was understanding DNA, understanding, oh, okay, look, you're just keeping the order of the letters and then everything else is detail. You've got, if you had a magical microscope by which you could look into a nucleus, you'd see millions of things moving around.
And so it took a theoretical step to say, look, you're just trying to keep the order of the letters, and that's the only thing that matters, and everything else is just housekeeping. That's what we need to understand in the brain, is what is the code? What's the fundamental thing that's going on?
Thanks so much for your time. I think we perfectly fit 15 minutes.
Great. All right. Thank you guys. Keep in touch. Let me know if you're putting out an article or something. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, of course. It will be in Ukrainian, but we'll definitely send it to you. Thanks so much.
Great. So two of the people at my company are Ukrainian, so I'll get them to translate for me.
Yeah, great. That would be perfect. Great. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.